the Divorced Girls Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast is a production of Divorced Girl Smiling, where every show is 30 minutes aimed to empower you, help you feel validated and understood, and connect you with some of the best divorce professionals in the industry. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling as you join us right now for the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Before we get started, I want to tell you about two Divorced Girl Smiling trusted professionals who I think are amazing. The first one is the law firm of Katz and Stefani in Chicago and Bannockburn, and I have known co-founder Dan Stefani for over 20 years. We met through friends, we live in the same community, our kids went to school together, and I always thought he was like this really, really great guy, and he is, but he's also a really well-known, well-respected attorney. Katz and Stefani is known for being the divorce firm for complex, high-asset cases. There's a team of 9 lawyers, and I've met all of them. They are wonderful. Such a class act, so professional, and they get really good results. Can't say enough about Katz and Stefani. If you want to learn more, go to katzstefani.com. I also want to tell you about a great divorce and decision-making coach named Karen Covey. And Karen is a former practicing divorce attorney who decided to focus all on divorce coaching. So if you work with Karen, you're actually getting the benefit of another opinion of a divorce attorney, and Karen will help you make the right decisions to get the best possible divorce outcome. Not to mention, she's so inspiring, so positive, and will help you emotionally through the process. If you want to learn more about Karen, you can find her at karencovey.com. And you can find both Karen and Katz and Stefani in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. So I would like to think that I am a positive person. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm always so full of sunshine and rainbows. I have my moments. But I would say in general, I'm pretty positive. I think that comes across in Divorced Girl Smiling and my brand, because I really, really try to stay as positive as possible. And the other day, I was talking to a friend of mine who said, my husband's negativity is truly draining me. And so it caused me to use my own experiences and try to give her some advice on being married to someone who's negative, or if you're listening to this and you're divorcing someone who's really, really negative, or you're already divorced, it's not easy. So my guest and I are going to talk about negativity in spouses, how it can affect you, what the signs are, what the negativity looks like, and what you can do to get out of that toxic environment. My guest is Joanne Littman. Joanne is a financial advisor. She's a divorced mom of 3. And hi, Jo.
Hello, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. And I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it. Jo looks so good. She's got her going out lipstick on.
Hey, if we're going to be positive, like I'm going to have that reflected in my lipstick too. Why not?
Well, wasn't it the first thing I said? I'm like, Jo, I love the lipstick. It just emits positivity.
Well, there you go. That's why we're here today.
All right. So I want to start by telling my listeners that Jo and I have known each other for probably like 6 or 7 years, maybe. And
Right.
you truly are such a good person to do this podcast episode with, because you truly are a positive person. I don't think I've ever been around you and seen anything but positivity. And I
Thank you.
know that you have your issues in life,
Of course,
as
do.
but you are one of my most treasured, most respected people for your positive outlook. That's why I thought this would be a great thing to talk about together.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. I appreciate that. I did have I have an old friend who used to call me annoyingly positive. So,
Well, there you go.
but I think that's more how he took it. Right. But it's important. I believe in this.
And I'm sure he's seen your going out lipstick too. All right. So let's get into what a negative person looks like. So, Joe, to you, what do you think of when you think of negativity in somebody's spouse?
Yeah, I think it can come through in a couple of ways, when somebody's, just sharing their day, right? The things that have come across, and either they're really just not engaged, right? Because they just can't seem to get excited about anything that you might get excited about, right? So you feel like, "Oh my gosh, did they even hear that?" Right? This was like such an important thing for me. And that's the way that negativity comes out. Or very directly, like just kind of combating. Everything has a negative side to it. So you talk about like you're excited about maybe something that's happening at work, and they just have oh, that won't last long, or um, you know, uh, that used to happen to me and it never turned out the way that I thought it would, or whatever the comment might be. But it's just that they can't just say like, "Oh my gosh, that's great. I'm excited for you," or anything like that. So it's kind of like bursting your bubble is how I would say it. Just burst your bubble constantly about anything that you might have that's positive.
Okay. Now, I remember when I was thinking of going back to school to become a news reporter. And I met this news reporter in Chicago, like at a bar one night. And I was like telling him, like, oh, I think I'm applying to schools. I think I'm going to go get a master's degree. I've always wanted to be a news reporter. And he was like, oh, don't do it. It's a terrible career. And I was so like deflated. I was like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. And obviously, you would never hear the name, he's probably out of the business, but, like, that to me was just like, wow, he just, like, shit on my dream.
Yeah. I think sometimes, right, that's like consider the source, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just somebody who's just not going to be happy about anything. So don't let them really impact what it is that you're trying to say. And maybe that was somebody that wasn't as successful as he, made it out to be, or wasn't successful at all in the field, right? You just met him kind of randomly, right? And so it's sort of like don't let people like that have an impact on you.
Well, we're gonna get into advice, and one of them is don't take it personally and that it's about the other person. But I want to just list a couple of other traits that I think are present in a negative person. And then people listening, let me know if this sounds familiar. So, like Joe said, everything's negative. It's like doom and gloom. Two, they have a lack of empathy. In other words, you're not allowed to have problems. Like, I wrote in my article here, I once told someone I had thyroid cancer, and her response was, oh, it's fine. No one dies from that. And then went on to tell me about a mole she had on her arm that she was afraid if she got removed might leave a scar. And I was like thinking, okay, she doesn't really care about me. Third thing, they complain about little things. The waiter's taking too long to bring the food. The weather's bad. There's so much traffic. They're not happy with their nail polish color, whatever it is. Number 4, they're pessimistic. Like Joe said, you come to them, you tell them something really good, and then they shoot it down and tell you, "Oh, it's never gonna happen. You're dreaming. Didn't work out for me. It won't for you either." Number 5, they constantly criticize you. This is interesting. Number 6, they're jealous of you. You can kind of tell that they're jealous. They can't be happy for you when something good happens. They just don't have it in them. Number 7, they try to make you feel badly about yourself, and a lot of times they don't even realize they're doing it. And number 8, they're not solution focused. They'd rather dwell on the problem versus trying to think of a way to solve things or make it better. So those are the things. And I want to say before we get into anything else that a negative person is not necessarily a bad person. They're not like an evil person. They're not horrible. It doesn't mean they don't love you, right?
Absolutely. And, and every comment or reaction that we don't like doesn't mean that person's negative either. It might just be an honest, view of something. Maybe it is, like you said, asking about a job or an industry or a field you want to go into. And maybe that person really has constructive, even if not the most positive things to say. Right. So there's a point where, I mean, sometimes honesty brings things that we might not like to hear. That doesn't mean the person's negative. And all negative stuff is not necessarily, like you said, coming from a bad or malicious place. I think I think a lot of times it comes from a place though where people are just, like you said, it's about them. It's not necessarily about us. But we have to figure out how to manage that.
You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today we are talking about your partner's or your ex's negativity and how it can be completely toxic and draining. And my guest is Joanne Littman. A financial Sorry. Joanne is a financial advisor and a divorced mom of three. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about negativity in the workplace. We're also going to talk about how a negative person can motivate you to become successful, and then advice for people who feel like they might have to get out of the situation, who can't really deal with the partner's negativity. We'll be right back. The finance aspect of a divorce can feel stressful and daunting and confusing. How do I know how much money I need to live comfortably? Am I going to be able to stay in my home? How can I prepare my taxes without my spouse? What should I ask for in the divorce? These are all questions that most people really don't even know how to begin answering, and they have so little confidence in themselves when it comes to anything financially related. It truly is intimidating. You know what? There's somebody that you can hire to actually hold your hand during your entire divorce and answer these questions for you. His name is Hirsch Sermon, and Hirsch is a financial divorce coach. I've known him for several years. He has an MBA, he's a CPA, so he can actually do your taxes, and he's a certified divorce financial analyst. Hirsch will help you in the process from the day you get separated, or even if you're considering divorce, until the day your divorce is finalized and beyond. Love Hirsch. I trust him so much. He's really, really smart. If you want to learn more, you can find him at lifecycle.financial. I also want to tell you about a team of real estate agents who I think are amazing, and I've known them for such a long time. Their names are Tammy Levy and Debbie Glickman, and they are Glickman Levy Residential in Chicago and the suburbs. I've probably known Debbie for like 15 years and Tammy for probably 3 or 4 years. They're both entrepreneurs. They're really motivated. They're really smart, experienced. They know the North Shore. They know the city. They know some of the surrounding suburbs. And they are just exuding positivity and energy. So I would highly recommend them if you're looking for a real estate agent. And you can find Glickman Levy Residential in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling, or at atproperties.com/site/Glickman Levy Residential. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Today, I'm here with Joanne Littman, a dear, dear friend of mine. I mean, Jo, we have become friends, and it means the world to me because you are just somebody I respect so much, personally and professionally.
Thank you. It means the world to me too. You're a very dear friend to me, and I just love being able to do this kind of stuff with you, but also just interact with you in general.
Well, I do want to mention your professional life. So if you're listening to this and you're going through a divorce, or you're thinking about it, or you're already divorced and you have any questions financially related to investing, insurance, budgeting, financial planning, anything like that, Jo is one of the best financial advisors I know. She has been doing this for several years. She really prides herself on advocating for someone. So if you and your ex used to go to another financial advisor and he was your ex's college buddy, and now you're looking for someone new, you should talk to Jo.
Thank
So
you.
you can reach her by going to the Divorced Girl Smiling website under Trusted Professionals, and there's a whole page all about Jo with her credentials and a lot of other good information. All right. Jo and I are talking about negativity in people who are near and dear to you and how it can drain you and how toxic it is. I want to get into negativity in the workplace. And Jo, how many jobs do you think you've had in your lifetime?
Oh, wow. Let me think really quick. When I started in like the professional world, 6.
Okay, that's actually pretty good. I've probably had 25s. I was like a founder. And don't you feel like some companies, like every workplace has a culture, has like its own personality. Some are really, really positive and fun, and you feel good about it, and you end up staying there for a while, and you probably thrive and become successful. Others are really negative and toxic.
For sure.
And I'm going to give my listeners an example of each. So, one company I worked for was a sales organization. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to call anybody out who might be listening. And there were 8 salespeople, and I was one of them. And our boss would come into meetings and say, if you 8 people cannot do the job, I'll find 8 other salespeople who can replace you who can. And I like would cry every morning because I didn't want to go. Like, what kind of culture is that? On the flip side, I had a sales job when I was first out of college, and my old boss, I'm going to name him. His name is Robin Hager. He was the best manager ever. He would have these sales contests for us. He made everything really fun. He was optimistic. He taught us how to sell with integrity, and he was just a great, great manager. And so see the difference. And I remember I thrived at that job with him. The other job I quit after like 2 months. So I want people listening to know that if you're in a toxic work environment, it's really bad for your health. It's bad for your emotional health. It's bad for your physical health. It's bad for your self-worth. It's bad for your pocketbook because you're not really going to make a lot of money if you're not successful. What do you think?
Well, I think all that's true. And this is a really big thing for me that I love to talk to people about. First of all, I think when you're we spend about half of our waking hours at work. Let's just face it, we do, right? And when you're in that toxic, negative environment during that time, it seeps into other parts of your life. If you want to say like, I leave it at work, oh, it's negative there, but it does affect you. And that can kind of creep up on you and happen slowly, but it does affect you both physically, physiologically, mentally, everything. But it affects other parts of your life too. So you just have to know. I think what else that I've learned over the years is that a negative workplace, like you left, right? I've left negative workplaces. Positive people leave negative workplaces. So what happens is you end up with the negative bunch. It's not just the boss that started it. It's like the only people that are willing to put up with that culture are people that kind of, in a weird way, want the negative culture, right? So you're surrounded by it. Like it's really hard to even find like the one person. And if you do, one of the two of you are leaving pretty soon. You know?
Right. And also, the person who works for the negative company and stays there might not have good self-worth. Maybe they feel like this is all they can get and this is the best they can do, or they don't have the courage to leave. But
Right.
what I do want to tell people is I hope you don't listen to this podcast and then say, you know what? Yeah, she's right. I'm going to quit my job. Just make sure you have another job first. But
Absolutely. And also, like you said, it takes courage. Have the courage. Look for a new job. You can try to change the culture that you're at, but that may be that it might be possible. And if it's really kind of systemic in that workplace, like you just might be better off because the whole rest of your life will be better off if you're not sitting in a negative workplace for half your waking hours every day.
and I also want to tell my listeners that okay, sorry. I just spaced now. I'm getting over the flu, so I'm a little bit spacey and a little lightheaded. But Joe, I love what you had to say. I want to move on to a different subject, which is, and tell me if you agree with this. Sometimes if you have a negative spouse, or even if you're working for a negative company, it can motivate you to be successful. I mean, you can want to be successful to spite someone. And an example I can give is I have this friend who was married to this guy. He was a major alcoholic. She was married to him for like 25 years. I don't even know how she did it. He was wealthy. She was a stay-at-home mom, raised their 4 kids. And she always wanted to be a nurse. And she would say to him, like, I really want to go back to school. And he would laugh at her. He would say, You're not smart enough. You could barely get through college. There's no way you belong at Neiman Marcus, you know. So then she got divorced and she went back to school and she is now a nurse and she's been a nurse for like 10 years and is so happy and so successful. And she said like his awful words were her motivator she was like, I'm going to prove him wrong. That was like so any situations come to mind like that for you?
Oh, yeah, so many. And, my divorce had a lot of those kinds of things in it as well. And I love that you said, two things. You said, in spite of, this being the situation, like she went ahead and did it. And she said, like, I'm going to prove him wrong. I think there's a fine line because I love. I love that perspective. Like, I'll show them, right, or him or her or whoever it is that I'm better than that. But I love the perspective that, like, you're taking a situation that's negative or toxic or both, and you've decided you're going to take yourself somewhere else in spite of it. What I caution people against is when I hear things like, I'm so glad. I think I'm going to thank my ex-husband's girlfriend, the one he cheated with, because, no, no, no. We are not giving credit to the people who did you wrong. I'm so glad I had that awful boss. If it wasn't for that, I might not. Nope. What happened was you were in a bad situation and you decided to forge a new path for yourself. And so you're the one that gets the credit for it. We're not going to thank the people that did us wrong. We're going to say, like, they did me wrong and I rose above it. Right. And so I think that's a really great perspective to have on those things. We're not going to thank the people who put us in a bad place, but we are going to take credit for the work that we did to get out of it.
I am so glad you said that because you're right. And people do say stuff like
All the time. It drives them. I go, wait, 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 wait. Like, oh, hold on.
leave that part out.
We have to have a little talk. Kind of thing. Yes, it happened. It was part of your experience, but you did it. They didn't do it. So you take the credit for it.
Okay. I want to move on to the tips we have and advice for people who have a negative partner or ex and it's draining you. And we've been talking about this pretty much the whole podcast. But number one, try to recognize that it's not personal and that he or she is most likely unhappy, jealous, miserable in their own life. This is not about you, it is about them. So, not taking it personally when it's your spouse is not easy to do, but keep telling yourself, this is not about me during those times when the toxicity seems overwhelming. What do you think?
I think that's true. I think there's, very few people that set themselves out to say, like, let me ruin somebody else's day, right? But it is because of other stuff that's going on, maybe internally with them. And I agree most of the time they don't even know that it's going on. I think sometimes that's where, a therapist, professional help can really come into play, whether that be couples counseling or encouraging that person to address what's going on. They might not notice it, but maybe starting with couples counseling and then going to individual. But it's, they might need help beyond what we can help them with. And it might be different to hear it from a professional than hear it from your spouse, right? Or somebody. So I think that that's something to really understand, that it's really probably that person's issues more than them wanting to hurt you.
I think I wrote an article a while back that was about like how the one thing you can't control is your spouse's happiness. And that's really frustrating for a lot of women. Like, we want to make it better. Even like with our kids too.
Right.
Our adult children, I'm like, shoot, I want to fix it.
Right.
And you can't fix somebody. They have to fix themselves.
Right. We can help them along the way, but I agree with you. And we can't over compensate on the positivity, right, to balance out that negativity. It doesn't really still work that way. It can be an exhausting situation to be in. And I hope people that can either find a way to have a really frank conversation, like tell the person how it's impacting them, or get some help if that'll help the situation.
All right. Second piece of advice. We already said this, but we're going to say it again. Use your spouse's or ex-spouse's negativity to thrive. Prove him wrong. In your heart, you can do whatever you put your mind to, and you don't need his or her validation or support. You've never gotten it in the past, so why would you want or need it now?
Right. That's a great question to always ask yourself. Or I always like to say, what would you tell your best girlfriend or your sister if you have one? Like, whatever that voice that's going on in your, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I shouldn't, gosh, like I was expecting him to be supportive. Like, okay, I'll just, put that dream away. But if you flipped it and said, my best friend came to me and said, this was the situation, you'd probably say to her, you do it anyway. You can do anything you want to. I've seen you do so many things. You can do this too. But we got to tell ourselves those things once in a while as well.
I was debating whether to tell this story. I think I'm going to go for it. But when I was a news reporter, my boss was so abusive to me. There's so many things I could say. And he belittled me, put me down, was so mean that by the time I left there, I was convinced that I was a horrible reporter and was incapable of doing the job. And at the time, I was 33, and I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, this is about him. He hit on you. He's not happy that you don't want to be his girlfriend, and he is taking it out on you. And, we can't go back. We have to just move forward. But really, it had a huge impact on my life. And that's why I want to share with people. Like, I realized the success I've had since, that there was no stopping me. And all he did was reroute me to do something differently. And I would never say I would thank him. But but he really motivated me to be like, when I
You used that motivation. You used that situation to be motivated, right? I'm gonna make sure, like, you used it, right?
Absolutely. So don't do that. And remember that it's about that person and not you. Okay. Number 3 is surround yourself with positivity and positive people. So, those friends who you go out with and you come home from dinner and you're like, why did I even go? Ugh. Yes. Instead, surround yourself with those people who lift you up, the mentors who say, you're doing amazing. I'm so proud of you. And not that like we have to only hear good things. I knew you were going to say this, Joe, so I'm going to say it. It's okay to hear criticism. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I listened to your podcast, and one thing you should do that I think would be helpful would be this. That's okay. I'm not immune to criticism at all.
Right.
But it's those friends who just, and it could be family members, anybody who are just, you can feel the negativity and the criticism. Stay away.
Yeah, I mean, I think, some of it's context, right? You've been in situations that are really challenging and hard to like always be positive. I've been in the same places. So it's great to get together with a friend who needs you, and maybe it's not the most positive time in their life, and that's okay. We shouldn't expect anything more. But it's when it's not those circumstances, right? And the person in good times is also just negative and draining and can't find that light, that can't appreciate anything that they have. That's what you're really talking about, right? Is that kind of thing is like, you got to sometimes limit your exposure to those kinds of things. It's how
Okay, now what do you think about saying to the negative person, like, let's say it's one of your good friends, like, I love you and we've known each other for 20 years, but you have become really negative and I want you to see that. What do you think they would say?
I think it's very individual, right? There's some people that might be like, wow, I needed that wake up call. You know what I mean? And only Jackie could have said it to me, right? They might just need it and they might need it from you depending on a relationship. And there's other people that will react in the opposite direction. I really think that people who, don't want, don't have the drive, don't believe in themselves, don't want to work hard to improve their situation, they don't want anybody else to either, because then they're left behind. So those people can be very negative even about themselves and about you because they don't want you pulling away from them, so to speak, in that way, right? So that's a tough thing. You may never get through to somebody like that, but it could be somebody that needs a little bit of a shakeup, right? And I don't know the exact words. I think again, it's very individualized, and you may know that person best and know how to say like. I mean, for me, I might approach it like, I think your approach is great, Jackie. We all have to be very authentic. I think mine might be like, is there something that you need or like what's happened? I feel like something's changed in you. Like what's happened? I want to help. and see maybe they know and they feel kind of stuck in it, and that'll help them start to get out of it. But
I love
person's a little bit different.
I love that approach. But I was going to say you have to also risk, if you're going to say something, might losing the friendship.
Yeah, they might just not want to hear it because they don't want to talk about getting out of it and being better, and they may take it as offensive, like all of a sudden now you're wrong, right? You did something, you hurt them. They're going to turn it around on you. Some people will, some people will.
I'm a victim. Another person's hurt me. I'm just going to be more negative. Okay, last one. Don't ever forget your belief in yourself. We all have goals that we're working towards. We all have like this, we're always working towards something, or we're always trying to improve ourselves. So every day I wrote here, try to look in the mirror and say, I'm working on my goals. I'm going to get there. I'm capable of achieving what I want. I'm smart. I will be successful. And I think that if you do that every day, you're kind of crowding out the negative person that might have set you back a little bit that day.
Yeah, and celebrate the little wins. Like if like your example of your friend that was going back to nursing school, like if that's a situation that people relate to, put on that little mantra that you're going to read every day, put maybe 10 things that'll help you get from A to B. I have to, I'm going to research 3 nursing schools. I'm going to apply. I'm going to whatever the pieces are. And then every time you do one of those, look at it, check it off the list, have it like on your mirror with your mantra, you know what I mean? Be like, I did something towards this, right? I did something, and celebrate that. Because some of our goals are big, right? It's going to take a little while to get there. You don't want to lose the fact that you're doing something all the time and you're making progress. What do they say? Like progress, not perfection, right? So move towards your goals, make progress, but don't forget to reward yourself and acknowledge yourself for having done that along the way.
Jo, if you're giving this good of advice on this subject, can you imagine the financial advice you give people?
Love it. You're adorable.
Well, I couldn't resist that because I truly believe it. Jo, thank you so much for having this conversation. I'm very, very inspired, and I think we helped a lot of people.
I hope that we do.
And to my listeners, if you want to read the article I wrote on this, it's at divorcegirlsmiling.com. You can also go there to find Joanne Littman, financial advisor. Just go to Trusted Divorce Professionals, look under financial advisors, and you'll see everything you want to know about Jo, and feel free to call her for a free consult. And I want to thank everybody, and I want to tell you to stay positive. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you real soon.